All right, Secretary John Kerry, thank you very much for making time for us. Let's get to the headlines right away. This story from Bob Woodward talking about his conversation with the president. And the president saying, trying to find the exact quote here, president said, "I still like playing it down. I don't want to create panic." In fact, he kind of doubled down on that today in a recent tweet. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you sort of balance that, the concern about the virus versus not creating panic?
Well, the president basically lied to the American people with the consequence that tens of thousands of people died who didn't have to die. I mean, that is exactly what happened. He calls it playing it down and doesn't want to create panic, but this is a president who's been trying to create panic about the suburbs, about, race, playing the race card. He's playing panic every day. And the truth is, what he really wanted to do was protect his economy, because he knew that if people took it as seriously as they needed to, his economy would take a hit. His economy took a hit anyway. And he lied to the American people so that he never said to people, you should be wearing masks. He told Bob Woodward on the 7th of February that the COVID-19 was worse than the more strenuous flu. Then he went out, Charles, and told our fellow citizens that they didn't have to worry. Only 15 people had it, a few people, it's going to go away. It's not that bad. Kids won't get it. I mean, lie after lie, which has cost lives. More lives lost over 3 months, more than 3 times the number of people who died in the Vietnam War have died in the United States because the president didn't level with the American people. That's his job. And I think that Americans ought to hold him accountable for this, if for anything.
How do we know what Joe Biden will do? It is easy to be in this position to second guess what the president did. How do we know what he will do?
I'll tell you exactly how you know and how you can trust it. Because in January, Joe Biden laid out in detail the steps that we needed to take to beat the pandemic, to deal with the pandemic. He laid out what we needed to do. He talked about the PPE needs, the need to prepare, the need to socially distance, all of these, to trace, to test. We're still not testing in America at the level that we ought to be. So Joe Biden laid it out. This is not after the fact that Joe is saying something. He said something before Donald Trump told Bob Woodward that it's worse than the most strenuous flu. So Joe Biden was ahead of the curve, and it's clear that had we followed Joe Biden's advice, America would be leading rather than lagging and falling behind every other nation in the world.
Was he ahead of the curve or behind the curve when it came to China and protecting those travelers coming in? The president says he didn't agree with him on that.
Yeah, but the president didn't shut it down. We had 40,000 plus people come in after the president said he shut it down. It was already too late. People were here. That's the problem. The people had come from Wuhan already. The president waited. He dawdled. So the president was the one who was getting the intelligence information, and his own people were beginning to urge him early in that period of time, February, I guess, that he needed to take steps, but he didn't want to take those steps. And the reason he didn't want to take those steps is because he wanted to be able to say to people, look at look at what we're doing. And we've paid a very, very high price for it as a nation.
Secretary Kerry, let me ask you something that's more in your lane. When you ran for president back in 2004, the Iraq War was very prominent and a big issue. But the president said something during his acceptance speech saying that I have kept America out of war. Troops are coming home. There's a Middle East deal. ISIS, the caliphate, has been 100% wiped out. Does he deserve any credit for any of that?
Well, I think the president, if you want to give credit for continuing the strategy that we put in place, I mean, we're the one, the Obama administration built the 68 nation coalition, and President Obama made the initial decision to start bombing and using American forces working with our Arab allies to go after ISIS. And we had meeting after meeting, week after week, every week, targeting, working on how we were going to defeat ISIS. And we turned that over to the administration. I'm glad they continued it. And our soldiers are the ones who really deserve the credit. The people who are on the ground who fought the war and did the thing, and in the air, at sea, who did the things we needed to do. But nobody's trying to take that credit away from him. The president continued a good policy, and good for him. But he hasn't succeeded, unfortunately, in changing the dynamics of either Ukraine or the dynamics of Afghanistan or Libya or Syria or a bunch of other places where he almost hasn't even tried to, or Yemen. So I really think that taking a victory lap or that kind of thing is premature and not entirely merited.
Something that you had to deal with.
Sorry, Charles, I was just going to say, there is no question but that the world is a more dangerous place today than when Donald Trump came in, because Kim Jong-un has more nuclear weapons than he had before. He's continued to build out his program while Donald Trump writes love letters. And the fact is that Iran, by pulling out of the nuclear agreement, we now have ships being shot at in the Gulf. We came to the brink of war, and he doesn't have anything to show for that either.
Something you did have to deal with in the closing days with the Obama administration is about the interference in the election by Russia. How concerned are you for the 2020 election, and what should we be doing about it?
Well, yes, I think everybody should be concerned about it. There's an enormous amount of traffic on the internet, which comes from Russian bots and from the trolling that they're doing. And what we need to do is make it clear to President Putin the price that would be paid for continuing to do this. But Donald Trump has never raised it. He said in Helsinki, standing a few feet away from President Putin, he said to the world that President Putin denied it. And he said, quote, "I have no reason not to believe President Putin." Well, on the contrary, he had every reason in the world not to believe President Putin, because our intelligence community, all of it, was telling him that this is a fact and that Russia has done this. So Donald Trump chose Vladimir Putin over the entire intel community of the United States. And the result is that we have never held Putin accountable in the last few years for what he's been doing.
One final question for you. Want to take you back to October 2004, Madison, Wisconsin, perhaps the largest campaign rally I've ever been to in Wisconsin. What do you remember from that day, and how did you pull that off?
Well, I remember that day very, very, very fondly, because it's not often you get to be introduced by the boss, by Bruce Springsteen. I give a lot of credit to Bruce for drawing in a lot of those folks. But on the other hand, that was mid-October. The campaign was reaching a place of momentum. We were really moving. We were doing very well. And Madison is a hotbed of activity, of engagement, of people caring and being involved. And I will never forget standing on the street looking up towards the hill and the Capitol, and there with all these frat houses and other houses, and music coming out of it. And the energy of that day was just really super exciting, unforgettable. You know, we had a redux of that actually in Cleveland, Ohio, a few days later with the boss again. But it was I happen to be a huge fan, so
who isn't?
Who isn't? So it was exciting for me to be there with him and to take part in it. And to this day, I remember it fondly. Great. Yeah. I'm grateful to Madison. I'm grateful to Wisconsin. I won Wisconsin. We won Wisconsin together. You know, all the folks who were there that day and beyond. And I hope that Joe Biden can have the same same results this time.
Well, I remember that day well, so I thank you for reliving that moment, and I thank you for your time today.
Thanks for bringing it up. Are you kidding? That's more fun to talk about than the other stuff.
It is a good moment, so I wanted to bring it up because it's very much in the memory bank of a lot of political reporters who covered